Right, welcome to this New Growth ConeX Portal LinkedIn Live event. We've got a panel discussing optimization versus automation. I will hand over to Sam to do a bit of an intro in the discussion, and then we'll get cracking. Here's the latecomer. Let's add him in.
Thank you very much, Adam. Good morning, everybody who is listening live. So what I will say as we're going, please comment, please send messages, please engage with the post as you see it on LinkedIn. Those messages get fired through to us, so we'll be able to ask the panel any questions and raise any topics that you want to discuss. I can see Lee Howarth is already here saying good morning, so good morning to Lee Howarth. Our LinkedIn lives that we do here are we will do them once a month from the ConeX and New Way Growth kind of collaboration that we're working on, and we bring in some special guests and panel members to run the sessions around very specific topics that they've selected. So instead of going into all details around what we all do and what we're about, I will hand straight over to Peter, and he can give a little bit of a background about himself, his company, and why he's chosen this kind of topic to discuss today.
Morning, thanks, Sam. Yeah, my name is Pete. I'm part of Omnitech, and we help customers, manufacturers improve processes, whether that is via automation improvements or whether that is via more traditional optimization, lean and TOC type of methodologies. And today we want to have a chat around people who have had some success stories on to improving processes for customers, and have some tips and tricks for people who are looking at these types of things or have done things in the past, what has worked well, and how these two things can bring success and value to people in manufacturing. So what we're going to start off with is just an example. I'd like to just get some conversation going around it. Adam, if you could put up the example. I've got here just a case of a very basic value stream. Tried to just bring it right down to two things to make this as easy to discuss as possible. But we've got process A that might be a CNC machining step, manually run CNC machining step, and process B is a regulatorily required inspection. You can see you've got some run times, are 300 seconds for process A, 900 for the inspection, 4 days of lead time between those things, and an amount of stock there. So I guess I'd like to open it up to our panel members and kind of see, if you were going into a manufacturer that had this kind of starting place, what would be some of the first things you would ask and talk to them about? I don't know, Steve.
I look at that and I say the inspection time sounds a bit long. It's considerably longer than the processing time, and 4 days inventory is an awful lot of inventory, because if it's going to fail inspection, I would want 4 nanoseconds of inventory, not 4 days, because if something gets through to the inspection, then you've got 4 days scrap and not 4 nanoseconds. So those are the two things that, simply looking at it, jump out. I'd also say what sort of inspection is it? Is it manual? Could it be automatic?
I'd be
automatic. Could the inspection be done at the process?
Well, that's the first thing I'd be looking at, Steve, is the value added, non-value added element from a customer perspective. Is the inspection something that the customer pays for? So therefore, if it is why do we need to do it? Can we put it back to the machine, back to the previous process? So we build in quality from a Jidoka point of view, and then we remove that inspection process. But there's a whole host of things I'll be looking at from a tact time point of view as well, and around operating. So yeah, that's for me. But VSM is a great tool for highlighting.
I think you guys have highlighted a couple things there right off the bat, which I think are super important for manufacturers to think about, is that you've got an example there of, you've got this big amount of waste waste from a lean point of view, and you may have overproduced, or you've got this issue with this amount of stock that's sitting between these two steps, and if you can move those two together and essentially do the right on the back, then you've already made a significant improvement on the lead time of your production. On the other hand, once you get to that point, you've pulled that out, there's an opportunity now for, I think, optimizing the inspection, as you said, Adam. Can we run this? Can we do something that, in my head, if this was a regulatory, you have this big long checklist of things they need to have, that they want inspected for this part, it's going into a highly regulatory environment, then you need to have that. You can't get rid of it. You've got to produce the paperwork. How do we make it faster now? You've got to do it. You've got to do it faster. And so now this is a place maybe we can look at what your optimized or your automated solution could be. Is there a place where you guys have seen in your experience where someone has got it wrong, where they've come in and they've basically said, we need to either automate this process, and really they should have been looking at a bit of optimization, or vice versa, or somewhere where the balance became difficult to keep even?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. From a machining point of view, or from a production point of view, the tendency is from, you spoke around the 7 wastes earlier, is that the tendency is we focus on the cycle time to reduce the cycle time of production. So we'll look at automation through that. We don't do so, we'll automate the cycle time, which is fantastic. But all it does, and if we take the example of that 4 days, is that it increases the inventory because the processes outside of that cycle aren't optimized. So the balance isn't correct. So we've produced it faster, we're more efficient, but it sits there for longer because we haven't looked at the whole from the value stream point of view. So yeah, loads of examples from that for me, Peter.
I'd agree with Adam. That probably when I started, when I was a lad 40 years ago, the first thing people would jump on, or we would be asked to do, was, this process goes a bit slow. Can you make it go faster? And the issue that we would bring up together with VP Ops at the time would say, well, why are we making this go faster? It just sits on the shelf longer, and we would be very much driven by theoretical cycle time. And often we'd find that our theoretical cycle times were anything up to 6 or even 10 times more. Our actual cycle times was maybe 6 to 10 times theoretical. In other words, we spent most, it didn't just spend the same time on the job as it spent on the shelf. It was on the shelf 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So it was routine that we would have to go in and say, okay, what are the processes where we need to look at the tack time? Why are we not picking up the right batches? How do we get them in the right order? So a lot of the time then moved very quickly to making sure that the time spent on the shelf was minimized, and defectivity was minimized during the actual processing steps.
Yeah, all of this sounds like it makes really good sense. I think it's that idea of defining what value is in terms of the customer and looking at the whole process, because as you say, it's so easy to focus on, let's make that faster. But if it's sitting around doing nothing, then you're going to have waste in different areas. So I do think it's mapping the whole thing, and also kind of, it's always easy to buy the sexy automation, the sexy bit, which is going to move it forward. And those can add huge value. But if you do that before you've understood the whole thing, you risk just buying the sexy new toy, and actually it's not going to deliver value.
I think that's right. And I think there's a couple of points that have hit in a few places. One is that, if the goal of whatever the solution is to bring value to the business, usually for most of us, that value is making money, and that's cash, and that's cash flow. And the more inventory, if we speed that up and whack inventory on the shelves, that is cash that's tied up somewhere else that we can't use for something else that we need to. So obviously that's not a good situation. And also at the end up in the situation of a theoretical reduction in cost of making that part, where really we're talking about capacity increase, right? You know, and so if you make that part faster, you still got to run the machine, and if the machine's still going to sit there or have a person running that machine, you still have to pay that person. So unless you've got something else for them to go do, which now you need more capacity, then this is an opportunity to do that. The only thing I'd say, Ben, is that I think when it comes to automation, there were some very clear things that I've seen where outside of the process improvement things, we've seen like you need to automate something, and it could be something along the lines of, you know, a repeatability thing, right? You can't do it in a manual way. If you automate it, now we can make sure that it's done the same way every time. Your quality might go up in that case. It could be a regulatory requirement in terms of a type of process that can't be done by a human or in an old way, or something has changed. So I think there's some opportunities on the automation side to, for the right application, to, you know, bring that, ignoring that it's not about speed. Let's say it this way. It's not about speed. There's some other thing pushing you in the automation direction.
I'll give you a specific example. We used to find in wafer fabs that we could improve the control of a process by automating it, particularly when you were dipping wafers in acid. So what you'd find is that you had to dip the wafers in the acid, and then the operator would take them out of the acid and transfer them into a water dunk. So what we could actually show by CPK improvement was that if we actually automated that, then the transfer time was always the same. And even with the best operators, the best person, even if you did this capability by your best operator, a robot did it better, because quite simply the transfer time and the shaking in the water and the move to the dump rinser was always the same. So you set up the process so the whole process there just gave you the answer you wanted, and the robot did it. So that used to happen time and time again. That was routine. That robots beat your very best operators all the time.
And I think, you know, it's interesting as we go into an environment where wages are going up, where staff are harder to get. It does make the argument for automation stronger. And I think if you're working with an expert such as some of the guys here who will actually map the whole process and find the right places and almost a priority list of where you can automate along with optimization, that is going to make a difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. With that. Sorry.
No, I also think you've got to have a step back again, because and engage your people, because I think if you start to implement automation, and that immediately means that there's another person out on the dole or selling the big issue, what you've got to do is say, okay, we're going to automate in these areas. That's going to create so many bodies, and you need to be able to say, no, we're not going to put. It's not about sacking people. It's about taking the tedious work out of the process, and then it's about taking the people, and maybe it's a person who just wants to press a button. So move them to another button pressing, and release somebody who wants to go and learn some process improvement skills. So I think you need a people migration strategy as well as an automation strategy, because your benefits, if you don't believe that your people are bringing you benefits, then I think that you're missing a trick, because they are. So you need to have that in parallel with your automation.
Yeah, you've got to have a people proposition with any change management. That's not just automation. With any change management process, you need a people proposition around how you manage that fair process, that you deal with that and help employees. The one thing I was going to say in stepping back is that what we tend to do in manufacturing is look at the overall equipment effectiveness. In actual fact, there are three measures. There's overall logistics effectiveness, overall purchasing effectiveness, and overall equipment effectiveness. And those three times together give us overall supply chain effectiveness. And so you can delve into, so it's not just manufacturing, it's not just the production automation process. It can be within marketing, in automating stuff within marketing, such as chatbots, AI. We can do things in logistics. from self-driving vehicles, things like that. So there's a whole host of different things, but it is around understanding that big picture around what you want. You can drive operational excellence, but you can't drive operational excellence or have operational excellence without having operational excellence in logistics as well. So that's that big picture thing around what you're trying to achieve.
And even going bigger than that, if you think about it, so recently a lot of manufacturers have been hit by the supply chain issues and all those types of things. And actually, if you can automate and get more efficient, you can look at the whole cost of that. So actually, you can onshore stuff and things, and that's going to give you more control, which again is going to help you serve your customers better.
Yeah, that's where that overall supply chain effectiveness comes in, because that's where you're looking the whole value stream.
In both of you have hit on the idea of the increased capacity is the real root here. If your person goes to do something else, you've freed up that capacity. I think, and that is it's only a positive thing for manufacturers or whoever, quite honestly, from the point of view that now you have an ability to sell more, you can do more, and your growth potential becomes that much higher as you work through that. I think in terms of successfully navigating where to make those improvements, and like you said, I think having that you need to have that top level view. I think we had an example of someone who had a process to build something, and one of the reasons they were looking at automating it was an HS&E thing. It was they had some weights they needed to move around to do a procedure to kind of test this unit, and they had streamlined the front end. There was no waste in it. They were building small batches. There was no overproduction. They had leanized basically as much as they could and reduced their waste as much as possible. This was just a hard thing. And so now it becomes a clear place to automate and improve that kind of last step. It's safer now. It's faster. You have one person running 3 things as opposed to one person doing one job. And it allowed them to sell significantly more of those, because now they could go to the customer and say, yes, we can meet that order of a 4-week lead time of whatever this is, because we know that our lead time is now dropped from, a week to do 100 units to a day to do 100 units.
Yeah, the overall objective around that is that from there is that they know that they can get an increased sales by reducing the cycle time. So understanding the takt time that you can deliver from a customer point of view. So actually always be your focus is actually what's my takt time and can I deliver against it, and can I operate my processes to that.
Is that how you approach potential kind of customers in this field then? So I'm just thinking from a manufacturer point of view, completely overwhelmed with everything going on, way too busy at the minute, time poor, don't know what they're doing tomorrow, let alone next week. How do you kind of essentially pitch it to them that this is going to save them X amount of time, X amount of resource, whatever it may be, to actually get them to put in that initial bit of effort to improve what they're doing?
That's a good question. I mean, my view on this one is there can be a number of variables in here. In this one, Peter, sort of like I've say on this as well. For me, it's around. Generally, what you will find is that there is something that is keeping them up at night. There is something that is bothering them. There's something that's pissing them off, to say the least. That they've got an issue with, and they want it addressing. So you go in, but you need to have a look at the whole picture. You need to see it. And map that process, like Ben said, and Steve has said, and Peter. You need to understand the whole around what you are trying to achieve. First port of call I always do, because it's a leveler, is that I will come in and I've done this recently. Right, what's your customer demand? And I'll look at that and I say, right, what's your daily available time? And I'll do one into the other and say, right, you've got to be producing 1 unit every 1 minute. Can you do that? And that's the leveler. Because now it's understanding, right, if you can't, what do we need to do that, and where's the first port of call that we need to go and look? And do we then look at potentially automation in some of those processes? But you need to see the picture. And one of those things is like what Peter put up there, is utilizing the value stream map from a top level point of view, and then detailed analysis into it as you get into further where you found the bottleneck, because you mentioned theories of constraints earlier as well. where you found the bottleneck, where you found the constraint. Right, now go and exploit it and see what you can do. And there are a number of different things in that approach as well. So yeah, that's just my take. Go on, Peter.
Well, I think from my point of view, I think where the most likely to see success is exactly as Adam said. You've hit a place of where's their pain point. Usually they know, right? I think the worst case scenario is you walk into someone and they're just like, they're recognizing that their order book is up here and their production capacity is here. And they're just saying, how do I get from here to here, right? I think the big thing for me that comes out is generally the optimization options tend to have a lower capital expenditure, right? The return on investment tends to be faster. You know, you can put some processes in place and hopefully have some quick wins and see as you move in those directions. And maybe that a different bottleneck shows up, unless you know there is something specific around that is just well suited for automation. And those are the conversations we can have. You know, around is there a quality? Is like one of the issues that the reason that there's waste is that it goes over here, it fails an inspection, it comes back, it does something else, and you're back and forth. So if we automate the front end, great, now we can eliminate the quality problem, and now our whole tack time goes down, and we improve our general producibility of that, so we know the next step it's going to be right. And for me, those are the things that looking for those opportunities to help the customer with the quick wins and with or specific where automation is really it's a significant improvement over the status quo is where I think that it's really helpful.
I don't do a lot of lean. I only do lean if I can't help it, and I get paid a lot of money for it. I don't like lean very much. I tend to do a lot of. Adam knows I never use hyperbole at all either, but I tend to do a lot of Six Sigma defectivity reduction stuff because customers will have nasty things like field failures and automotive customers coming in with the big steel toe cap boots. So one of the things I do is that you always have to engage the engineers, and I've found this more and more recently that you engage the engineers, and the engineers say they don't have enough time. But what I usually do is I do like a modern version of the old consultants trick, and the old consultants used to come in and say, we want 10% of your workforce. But what I do is I'll go in and I'll say I want 10% of your time engineers. And they'll swear blind they haven't got time. But when you actually look at it, you usually find that most engineers don't spend more than about 8 hours a week working on something the customer wants. The other 32 hours a week are spent corporate fanning about. So what I'm saying is that I'm not going to tell you what meetings not to go to or anything like that, but you find 4 hours a week, okay? And one of the benefits, as it were, an ancillary benefit of going in and doing this is all of a sudden the engineers who are only doing 8 hours of useful work a week can now start to do 12 hours. I've had engineers tell me in private that the recent programs I've run were the best thing they'd ever been part of, because they then started to learn how to manage their time properly. So we made them manage their time to meet this customer requirement. And then on the basis of that, they learned that they could manage their time. They could do 12 hours of useful work a week. So why not do 16 hours? I'm told that something like 16 hours is probably benchmark. That's what the South Koreans do on the whole. And this is just stuff I've pulled off from the web. The 8 hours a week, I can verify. I've done that to myself, and I used to do it when I was a young engineer. I used to try and do about 12 hours real work a week. And then I used to pick and choose the meetings I went to and the stuff I supported and things. So in other words, the point is what they learn from defectivity reduction, process optimization is not just how to run one particular project, because they get a bit of guidance from me and some support from the senior management, but you actually help them in their time management. And that is, as it were, the skill that then carries on. But their managers have to understand that as well, so that the managers can start to say, guys, we can do 12 hours useful work a week, you know?
I think, I don't know if any of you have seen it. There's been again, love him or hate him, but there's been a post going around over the last couple of weeks about something, an email Elon Musk sent to his staff. don't know if anyone's seen it. Two of you are smiling.
Which one? The one about he wants high intensity, long hours. Click the
No,
link.
no, pre-Twitter. This was some of his other stuff. And he was basically emailing his staff saying that you don't have to have 6 hour worth of meetings every day. Most of what you do in these meetings, you're just talking for an hour or having a coffee or not really actually doing anything productive. So if you've got something to make, just send them a Slack message or send them a message and have a one-to-one, sort it out there and then move on. Like, you don't need to block out your diary quite so much with a meeting every single hour. And that's basically going back to what Steve was saying. Now, I will find the post. I can't remember who's posted it, but
there's a whole thing on effective meetings within a business, and one of those ones, if you're broadcasting something, send it through an effing email. You don't need to pull a meeting together for that.
Yeah. Isn't a lot of this stuff
that's a separate issue, though?
Is it not? A lot of it not covered in the goal by Gold Wrap?
The theory constraints side,
but also didn't the nice new fancy machine turn out to be the bottleneck because it was a because it was a flow process feeding into a bolt process, and if you've ever dealt with that, it's a right pain. I've done it. It is trying to convince people that a flow process leading into a bolt process, however much they've matched it, what you usually find is that any glitch transfers itself down the line into a bigger glitch at the ensuing processes. But that's a good book to get you an introduction into not just the flow and robotics, but people management as well.
I think I would highly recommend. I mean, I've read that twice. You know, it's a pretty easy read when it comes to considering a lot of the text out there around, you know, these types of topics, and it definitely helps bring home some of the things we've been discussing here today. I think
I'm just wary of time. We're coming to the kind of half an hour point, which is, you know, a kind of good time to start to wrap things up. But there's a few things that have come out during this, and a lot of it is focusing around that. You know, we even discussed it on our last session, didn't we, Adam, about the looking into the future and deciding where you want to be in X amount of time, but then coming right back to today and doing those kind of quick wins that you can start to tick off and start to actually achieve. And that's something that's, you know, Tom's commented in the chat at the same time, saying that what I was saying earlier about time poor individuals and all of that has resonated with him, because he's a one-man band in a workshop on his own. So, you know, those sorts of things do resonate. And where are some of these, and I'm putting you on the spot a bit, some of these kind of quick wins that people can start to look at? Where should they start if they're starting to go down this path? And what common mistakes do people make that you've seen? Don't know if you can answer that in 2 minutes, but I'll give you a go.
They don't go for quick wins. The engineers tend to go for I want to buy a new machine and then install it. So you've got, if you look at the difficulty impact matrix, to start with, you want to look at the low difficulty and medium to high impact. So do your little Boston matrix. The engineers will invariably go for high impact, but high difficulty of implementation. And then you've got to pull them back and get them to do on some low-hanging fruit. So low impact, high impact, but low effort.
Yeah, they won't get past me without doing creativity before capital first. So they won't get any capital outlay until they've actually thought of some creative ideas in prior and implemented those.
Do the free stuff first.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on, Peter. You were going to say something.
I was just, I mean, exactly that. I think what can I get out? How do I get more with what I've already got, right? So essentially zero capital outlay, or maybe some new bins or something just to help organize work or whatever it may be, or rearrange the shop floor, or, you know, to move two things closer together, reduce, you know, foot traffic between two places. Those types of things are, you know, they're the types of things that you see any significant improvement right away and are fairly low cost. If they see a win, you can get some momentum. I think the hardest thing, you know, you mentioned change management before. I mean, the same managers and engineers that are, you know, struggling to get that extra 4 hours of work a week are going to be the same engineers and managers who struggle with that change management of basically, you know, not slipping back into old routines and old ways of doing it. And by codifying it and kind of helping that part of the training aspect, hopefully that would help them, you know, keep those wins going and then build momentum into the next thing. And you get to the point where now the engineer, we can do the fun and exciting thing that might be that shiny piece of equipment, because now it's going to have real value because you've already taken the low-hanging fruit.
I think, yeah, and I think for me, it's one of the reasons that I only recently introduced, which Stephen knows, a program called Helping Managers to Succeed and Lead, because I hear the time management thing a lot, and a lot of my emphasis goes into supporting managers and helping managers on how they do get time back to enable them and their training and their skill set up to be the leader that they need to be in helping bring their team, their high-performing team on, to give them the time to do the marginal gains that need to drive the process, this creativity, whilst they then work away this low-hanging fruit for the capital then to be brought in. So there's a whole host of little different cogs that need to be put in place with stuff from the top down to the bottom and from the bottom up to the top. It's not just a top-down process. It's a top and bottom process, top down, bottom up.
Yeah. Just I think for me, I think the final thoughts would be super clear on what value is to the customer, and also, you know, once you've defined exactly what the issue is, and you need to work hard to do that, involve the team, because the guys and the girls doing this on the front line will probably have a lot of good ideas which you may have not even thought of.
Yeah,
that is exactly what Melissa's just put in the comments there. Sharing knowledge with new recruits and bring people in to share that workload and come up with new concepts and new ideas. Interesting question from Tom Henderson, if anyone fancies having a go at this one. Do we know if East Asian companies look over at the UK and what we're doing as inspiration in any way? So, you know, companies that have completed these processes and companies that are successful in this. Do some of those other companies from overseas have a look at what we're doing and implement some of that?
I can't give you a current example, but I was under the impression that when Honda did the deal with British Leyland, that one of the things that they liked that British Leyland had was some absolutely excellent automation. So Honda recognized that British Leyland had great automation, but hadn't put all the other bits around it. So I was under the impression that they recognized that. And I think, I'm not sure of this, but I think they also recognized the strengths in the University of Warwick that had worked closely with British Leyland, and I also think worked closely with Honda in their manufacturing, with their manufacturing expertise. I'm not sure about that bit, but the first bit about British Leyland having some great automation that Honda liked, and that's something that they took. So you can bet your bottom dollar that they will do that, because that is how they work. They benchmark, they look for best practice, and they would walk around. Another example, I think, was with the Koreans with shipbuilding. They'd heard all these stories, and they went around the Glasgow shipyards, and they saw all this waste. So what they did was then they went back and they designed all their processes so that they didn't have the waste in them that we had in the Clydeside shipyards. So do they benchmark and take best practice and look at the things they like? Yeah, because that's the way they work. They benchmark. They will get every learning they can from our collective experience, as well as things they do themselves. They are dead canny, as they say.
Okay. Reverse to that question then. When they have benchmarked this and they have implemented some of those systems in their world, and they've improved it and gone further than us and been better, are our companies looking over there and bringing that back here afterwards?
You can have the simple answer or the long answer. The long answer is no. The simple answer is also no.
One thing I was just going to say, Sam, is that we have had some comments in the which you've alluded to, is engineers sharing. Melissa, you're saying engineers sharing knowledge with the new recruits is important. Now, for me, I mean, me and Murphy have spoke around this before, and I spoke around it in the FSB skills learning skills meeting round table. I believe that a new recruit should have a mentor within the business. at that lower level, because that both brings the person that is the mentoring and also the person that's being mentored on as well. And I think that should go across with apprenticeships. Apprenticeships should be being done with that. Mark Weymouth just put on 3/4 Make UK have just posted 24 minutes ago. 3/4 of manufacturers said leaders are important for improving productivity. Absolutely, no two ways about it. And there were some other ones. I think Lee Howarth said, I think it's a dose of common sense that we need training in for a lot of people, which, you know, is that
I think
as well.
that,
you know, not so common.
If those engineers are well mentored, they can spot the opportunities as well, so that when someone, you know, when they get to the point of, I want to be here, my revenue here, and my order book's here, and my capacity's here, that conversation among the team, if they've been mentored and trained and that discussion's been had, then that higher view look will be part of the normal culture of doing the job, right? You know, the front line, you know, as you mentioned, Ben, those people know what's going on, and they have some good ideas to come and say, this is a pinch point or this is a problem. And if they're good at spotting the opportunities, then your job becomes so much easier to help them put together a solution for those, to meet those needs.
So the only final thought that, because I don't know whether we've said it or not, the only final thought that I'd have is I know Peter put this up for a tack on the headline of optimization versus automation. They both go hand in hand, and if you haven't got that from this discussion, it is not an either or. It is utilizing both from a business perspective.
That was going to be my final question.
Fair
enough. Also, thank you for Mike Hansen for Elon Musk. I haven't shared it on here because it's quite a long comment, but if you want to go back and read some of that, then he's put some of those reasons in there that I was mentioning, so feel free to do that. So we'll bring this one quickly to an end. I don't know if Peter, you have a kind of closing comment or summary.
I think you hit it there. I think the takeaway is every business is unique. I think understanding those businesses, you know, that high level, it's getting down there, talking to the engineers, finding out where the opportunities lie, and finding the best solution for whoever that may be. You know, whether it is reducing waste, an optimization, Six Sigma type thing, or is it an automation, you know, regulatory, quality, just tack time improvement of a process, and finding the right blend of solution or plan, low hanging fruit to maybe higher impact but higher implementation, and putting together a plan so that you can bring value to the customer, to the builder, the manufacturer, which for most of us is money, makes some money.
No, completely agree. At the end of the day, there are things that everyone can be doing. It's just finding those things that are best suited to their business, isn't it? How can people get in touch with you?
Connect LinkedIn, omnitech.com. Drop a line on there. Either way would be great, and go from there.
Perfect. We'll put all the kind of comments, and I'll ask everyone on the panel to put their information in the comments as well. So anyone watching this back later on, you can connect and message the guys here. So I will end that session there. Obviously, say thank you very much to everyone that's attended, commented, and obviously Peter for hosting. Thank you, Ben and Steve, for coming along and putting your valuable input into that as well. I think it's been a really good session. As I say, we do these every month. We have brought the next month's one forward because apparently it's Christmas next month, which is insane. So the next one we're doing is the 14th of December. So keep an eye out for the information coming out around that one. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.